Well, we sat here yesterday and we talked about the craziness of Wednesday night, and it took us all of one night to top it.
Unbelievable. The Rack, I know it's officially
Jersey Mike's Arena, please. Thank you.
At the Rack.
Yes.
It came to play. The crowd was as crazy as it should be and has been in the past. I was thinking about it. The last time that Rutgers hosted a Big Ten regular season game, I was there. It was against Maryland, which they beat when Maryland was trying to win the Big Ten title 2 years ago. That's the last time that arena for a Big Ten home game has been like that. And it delivered no Geo Baker. Everything was against Rutgers. And Ron Harper Jr. played like an All-American, All-Big Ten, 30-10. Purdue, by the way, was right there to win it with Travion Williams down at the end. But Ron Harper had two shots, one before the Travion Williams and one, of course, after at the buzzer. And that's why we love this sport. I mean, to deliver that on a Thursday night in December, that's going to be a memory maker for Rutgers fans, that's going to have shelf life for quite some time.
It's pretty crazy. If for some reason you missed it, Harper's game winner is our big story. Let's take a look and a listen.
With 3.4 to go. Get it to Harper with 3, with 2, with 1. Harper for the win. Got it! Let's go! Let's go! Harper Jr. Let's go! The game winner at the buzzer. Let's go! And Rutgers upsets number 1 Purdue 70-68. Let's go! First time in program history that they have beaten a number 1 team. Let's go!
What a night. Again, first ever win over number 1 for the Scarlet Knights as Purdue loses its first ever game as the nation's top-ranked team. Harper, the hero, 30 points, including that remarkable game winner. He spoke afterward with our Robbie Hummel.
Ron, that's a heck of a game. That's a heck of a win. Take us through the last play.
The last play in the huddle, I told my teammates, if they score the ball, get me the ball, and I'm going to send us home, man. And that's what I did. These guys trusted in me. They gave me the ball for the last shot, and I knocked it down like I'm supposed to.
5 points in Illinois last week. Tonight you go for 30. What a difference a week makes. What was the difference tonight?
I just think as a team we prepared a lot better, man. We went to Illinois, and I felt like we didn't follow the game plan today. We stuck to what was working, and we stuck to the game plan today like we didn't practice, and we got to win.
Sports page, and you have done something right, or horribly wrong, I suppose, but right in this case. Are you serious in red today with an absolutely great shot? You see the ball clearly out of Harper's hands as the clock is at a half a second. Yes, sir?
A couple of points. Yeah. First of all, that back page, that's Jim Delaney's vision right there.
Yeah.
That's what he wanted. He wanted Rutgers to matter and be relevant in New York City, and they are after that win. I mean, that to me, that's Jim Delaney right there. Seriously.
Yeah.
That's what he wanted, to have the number 1 team come in and you knock it off. 2 other quick points. One, not to just sort of promote our guys, but what I loved about the call from Brandon Godden and Robbie Hummel, and you do an unbelievable job as play-by-play, is Robbie laid out. No offense to the Rutgers radio, but a little too much of the analysts.
Radio's different because people don't know. But yes, I agree. Let the pictures tell the story. There's a great Alex Birch used one of our bosses tweeted out the control room, and I retweeted it this morning. And I mean, it's crazy, right, to have a game go down like that. But the unbelievable, first of all, to your point, Brandon laid out, let the pictures tell the story.
But also Robbie laid out.
Yes, and Robbie did. And how composed everyone was in the control room to get the right shots and to tell the story and to let the fans in the moment tell the story. And that really is, again, a credit to everyone involved.
So 2 other points at the end there. First, this was so reminiscent of Indiana, Kentucky, how fast that crowd got on the court. If you remember when Christian Watford hit the shot, those fans in Bloomington just, it was like, and I talked to Ron Harper Jr. after the game, and he said it was like 10 seconds and there was 1,000 people around him. I mean, that's how fast it happened. He also told me, by the way, he hit a half-court shot at practice earlier in the day. Sometimes these things just work out like that. But on the Purdue side, if we back it up a little, I don't know if Pablo's can here, right there, Jaden Ivey does not want to foul him. You know, so Jaden Ivey is riding him. Okay, do you see how he pulls back a little? Because he does not want to foul him. And then Ethan Morton, you know, trying to gets right in front of him, forcing Ron Harper Jr., as I point to the screen there, Ron Harper Jr. to go off the wrong foot. But you kind of can't fault Purdue's defense. They did ride him.
They redirected him a little bit, which is what you want to do.
And he hit an unbelievable shot. Yeah. You know, at some point, you just hit an unbelievable shot. I think back to that Iowa-Rutgers game at the rack when Joe Wieskamp, I think it was Wieskamp.
Yes, it was.
Hit a crazy shot in the corner.
Out of the corner.
Yes, like, you can't, I mean, come on.
Right.
And Iowa won that game like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, this is what's wonderful about this sport, right, is you never know what's going to happen. And we're talking about a team that has been really a big disappointment. Yes. There have been reasons why they've been a disappointment. Geo Baker, they've had lots of injuries and illness issues and whatnot. But you know, they've lost to Lafayette. They've lost to UMass. They got obliterated by Illinois. I mean,
almost lost to Lehigh.
Blown out of the building. Almost lost to Lehigh. Lost to DePaul, which isn't a terrible loss, but a loss nonetheless to a team that probably doesn't figure to be a great team. And yet you turn around and you beat number one. And we sat here and talked yesterday, and I said, as we were previewing this game, it would help if Rutgers could make some shots.
Yes.
Like sometimes it just comes down to, can you put the ball in the basket? And against a Purdue team that is typically very good defensively. Now, their defense is behind their offense so far this year, but you shoot over 50%, you hit 50% from three. They made shots, and sometimes it's as easy as that. That was a huge part of what went right for Rutgers.
As for Purdue, after the game, Matt Painter talked about valuing possessions. And I actually kind of thought, I was there last Friday night against Iowa, I thought that's why Iowa got back in the basketball game. As much as Iowa's play helped get themselves back in and how hard they played, I thought Purdue kind of helped them because they didn't take care of the basketball late. They got trapped. And some of those possessions in the second half weren't valued by Purdue. And that's the kind of thing they've got to tighten up if they're going to win this league and win the national championship.
Right. I mean, remember, Rutgers got put into this spot partially because of Jaden Ivey getting caught in the corner, right, and traveling, and that kind of set up Harper to put them ahead initially, and then went down and Travion Williams hit, and then Harper comes back and hits the game winner. But, yeah, it feels like the guard play, if you're going to nitpick Purdue, and again, this is a really good team, and part of this is just kind of, as you say, you go on the road in college basketball and you just don't know what's going to happen because that you get a great home crowd and you get a team that's motivated and ready to go and plays really well. And this is just sometimes what happens. But I do think part of it is if there's any weakness with Purdue, it is how they handle the press, guard play. It doesn't feel like they have a great, pure point guard on this team. And so you do wonder just a little bit about that. And this is a team whose outside shooting wasn't great last year. It had been really good so far this year, but it kind of reared its ugly head a little bit. Again, in this game, didn't shoot it great from three. The bigs were fantastic, at least early on. Travion Williams kind of dominated. It was clear what their game plan was to get it inside, initially to Edey and then to Williams, but ultimately needed a couple plays from the guards and just didn't get them.
And that's why I think they're going to tighten things up Sunday against NC State, which I know we'll talk about later. And the same thing with Rutgers with their game Seton Hall. I think you cannot overstate that this was a season-saving win for Rutgers because of what they have Sunday against Seton Hall, which beat Texas last night. You lose this game, you got no momentum going into that Seton Hall game. Geo Baker, he's got the flu. Let's hope he can come back Sunday. He just came off the hamstring. I don't know if they can turn the whole thing around to be in the tournament, but they certainly have the potential. And this is that shelf life win that gives them hope.
And also, I think just kind of some of the guys that contributed. I mean, Mawot Mag.
Yes.
First career start.
Phenomenal, crazy dunk.
Outstanding at times in this game. And so now you say to yourself, okay, there's a piece that now will come off the bench when Gio comes back, presumably. But that's someone who can really help you. And so to me, it's not just you won a game. I mean, they were 217 in the initial net rankings. So, I mean, you're so far out of the discussion at that point. But, hey, it's December. It's early December. And so you got a chance to build your resume and take us through these next few months. But all of a sudden you say, hey, if he can be a key player for us, if we get Gio back and he starts playing well, all of a sudden you start seeing the pieces. And the reason why at the beginning of the year, Steve Peichel said this could be my best team. He believes in this team, and he still believes in this team, and really did a nice coaching job, I thought, last night.
And lost in the end of the game, if you remember earlier, in what I think it was like around the 6-minute mark. I could be wrong in that. But Cliff Amorie.
No.
What?
Didn't you hear them last night? Apparently he changed the pronunciation again.
I worked on this.
Amori. Now it's Amori.
I
texted with Robbie Hummel during the game. I said,
my God.
Did Cliff change it again? He said, yes, we were told today he changed it again. Amori now.
Okay.
I think that's easier.
Yeah, it is easier. Cliff Amori. Okay. I worked on this.
He has literally changed the pronunciation of his name like 5 times. And it's his name. He has every right to tell us how to pronounce it. However, yes.
He got hammered inadvertently. They didn't call flagrant on Zach Edey.
Yes.
I mean, think about 7'4", almost 300 pounds of that force coming down on the back of your neck on any human being, let alone someone who's as tall as Cliff Amore. I mean, you are going to feel that. And he went out, and that was scary. You know, he could barely stand up. You know, that was a point in the game where it looked like, okay, this is over. You know, he's out. So they came back from that situation to put themselves in position to win.
Yeah, no doubt. Really, really a fabulous story. We talked a little bit about Purdue, but I do want just your overall takeaways. I mean, to come in to be number one for the first time ever, you're the unanimous number one team in the country. There's so much momentum. And then in that very first game, to see it kind of slip away. Look, no one thought Purdue was going to go undefeated. Teams don't go undefeated. It's certainly not in a league like this.
Gonzaga almost did.
No, yes, I know. But it's probably not going to happen in a league like this one. It can happen, with all due respect, in the West Coast Conference or somewhere like that. But it's not going to happen in the Big Ten, certainly not this year. However, what does this do to Purdue, kind of the psyche, and what do you learn? Like I said, I mean, I have minor concerns, not major concerns, minor concerns about guard play, about point guard play. Is there anything else you take away from it?
Well, I'm going to give you this right here. This is a scenario, okay? This kind of feels like your college football playoff, if this. But I think there's still a chance they still could be number one on Monday, and I'll tell you how.
All right.
If Villanova beats Baylor, because Baylor will be number one if Baylor beats Villanova.
Yes.
If Villanova beats Baylor, if Illinois beats Arizona, okay? And if Purdue hammers NC State on Sunday.
Yeah.
So if those 3 things happen, because this was a buzzer beater, Purdue still could be one.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, someone could put Duke one. I get it. But okay, what's worse, a loss at Ohio State or a buzzer beater Rutgers? I mean, obviously Ohio State's better than Rutgers, but it was a buzzer beater.
Right.
So I think there's a scenario where you could make a case. Now, Purdue has to show well on Sunday against NC State.
Yeah, and we'll get to that game a little bit later. I know you're going to be at that one at the Barclays Center.
Do you buy me on that argument or no?
I guess. I think I haven't really studied it to the degree that you have. Because I think, to me, I just feel like the rankings are for conversation purposes only. And so it doesn't, it doesn't really have a material impact on the game. So I think it was great for Purdue, for the program. It's just amazing to me Purdue's never been number one with how many awesome teams they have.
I won't be surprised if my scenario doesn't happen, if they get back to one in the next couple weeks.
And I think that's my whole take. I still think this is a really good team, no doubt. And there aren't any there's no clear-cut best team in college basketball this year. I do want to get to Iowa. They got hammered by Iowa State last night. They lost by 20 points. And frankly, it was every bit that ugly. What do you take from the Hawkeyes' loss? Look, it's hard to go to Hilton and win. Iowa State hadn't lost this year. I get all that stuff. But this was a game where, outside of the first 5 minutes or so, Iowa really wasn't in it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the unfortunate part of scheduling. We've talked about this with Iowa, that they purposely, and I think made the right call of sort of building these cupcakes, up until their Big Ten opener at Purdue. The problem was Keegan Murray doesn't play. Then you got Illinois on Monday at home, and they have the best player that you don't have in the middle in terms of that's your weak spot. And then you go to Iowa State, and no one thought Iowa State was going to be this good, certainly this early in the season. So 3 in a row, all just steamrolled to Iowa. I think they can be okay as long as they sort of forget all this and now reset. This Utah State game, I think, is monstrous for them. They're very beatable. It's a decent team, but very beatable. It's in South Dakota. That's sort of their next big game. Got to win that. Got to go on a little roll here, going into the Big Ten. and build back up. I still think we're going to be talking about Iowa as an NCAA tournament team, a team that's going to be in that top 7 or 8 in the Big Ten.
I agree with you. I mean, I do think we saw what happens if a team is good enough to take Keegan Murray out of the game, and that was what Iowa State did. I mean, he really struggled offensively. He didn't make a basket until 28 minutes into the game, and it just didn't seem like they had any other options. I also think we have seen their limitations on the glass here over the last 2 games. They've given up 40 offensive rebounds the last 2 games. It's hard to win that way. So it'll be interesting. I agree with you. This is, to me, an NCAA tournament team, and I don't.
Now they got to go out and win.
Yeah, you're right. But I mean, I think they have the talent to do that. They have a lot of really, really good pieces. Bohannon's a fabulous shooter. Murray will bounce back. Inside's going to be an issue, but again, can you be somewhere in the middle of that Big Ten pack, which is where you need to be? I don't think there's any question you can be. But it's a wake-up call, and it hurts to lose to Iowa State. It hurts to get blown out. Down to 8 teams left in women's volleyball, and the Big Ten has fully half the field. Sweet 16 matches yesterday. Purdue fought off 4 match points. They beat BYU. Dramatic game. Ohio State blanked by Georgia Tech. Minnesota rallied to upset Baylor. They were down 2-1 before winning the final 2. They will take on Wisconsin, which easily dispatched of UCLA. Nebraska turned in an outstanding defensive effort in sweeping Illinois. So now 4 Big Ten teams in the Elite 8. This ties for the most in conference history. Been done 4 other times. Final 4 spots on the line tomorrow. You got Purdue at Pitt. One Big Ten team is guaranteed of getting through, as I mentioned, Wisconsin hosting Minnesota. Badgers won both regular season matchups, by the way, and then you've got Nebraska playing at Texas. Hoops doubleheader on the network tomorrow. Gets started with a battle of ranked teams, Wisconsin and Ohio State. Followed up with Penn State in East Lansing to battle the Spartans. All the fun begins with the tip-off show. Andy and I will be here with Trent Meacham. Join us 11:30 Eastern on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. All right, so let's dive into some of this action. Let's start with Wisconsin and Ohio State. And for the Badgers, it is their first game since that dramatic come-from-behind win, coming back from 22 down to beat Indiana 2 nights ago. And Ohio State's playing well. I mean, 3 straight wins. That includes the victory over Duke. Feels like maybe that jump-started them a little bit. What are you watching here in this battle?
Well, first of all, I love that we've got 2 elite players that have taken ownership of their teams in E.J. Liddell from Ohio State and Johnny Davis from Wisconsin. So we need that. It's great to see. As for Ohio State, their Achilles heel still remains how much are they getting out of their backcourt with Michi Johnson and Cedric Russell, who needs to get more action. I think that will come. They're work in progress. At some point, we assume they're going to get deeper with Justice Suing and Seth Towns.
Yep.
But I think the fact that Kyle Young played so well the other night, that's the X factor, because we were there last year. I am convinced that if Kyle Young does not get the concussion, I think it was in the Purdue game, Ohio State wins that game. I think Ohio State might have won the Big Ten tournament. They don't lose in the first round. I know I'm a lot of ifs,
right.
But he was that important.
It can't be disproven.
I know. So I can say it.
Yes.
They had great momentum, and he was such a great piece for them.
Agreed. Yeah.
He's healthy. He's playing well. That's huge. For the Badgers, they can't dig a hole like that against an Ohio State. Certainly not on the road.
Yeah.
Cannot happen. So they got to get, this seems to be an issue for them outside of the Houston game of being slow starters. They got to get going quicker. And I think those others need to play better at the beginning of the game. I mean, Tyler Wall and Chris Vogt played great later. That needs to happen earlier. Same with Chucky Hepburn. But Johnny Davis is playing an elite, and I'm going to keep hammering this. Right now, especially after, if I did this tomorrow, I did the top 6 the day before, I had Davis 2, I would have him 1. I think right now he's the Big Ten Player of the Year.
Who did you have 1?
Well, I got influenced by Raphael Davis. I was working with him. So I had Jaden Ivey because Purdue was 1, so we felt like we had a Purdue player. But Johnny Davis right now, he's the best player in the Big Ten. He's the Player of the Year candidate, and he's a first-team All-American right now.
Okay, by the way, Ken Palm does his Player of the Year deal, right? You know who's number 1 in the country right now? In his Player of the Year? E.J. Liddell.
Okay.
How about that?
All right.
I mean, well, it just shows you the star power in this league. And then you can argue, Keegan Murray was the nation's leading scorer going into last night. I haven't checked today to see whether he still didn't have a great night. But it does show you Kofi Cockburn. I mean, there's so many good players in this league. Speaking of Kofi Cockburn, what about Illinois? It's an interesting test. Kind of a late afternoon game tomorrow against Arizona. Just a home game against an elite team. Tommy Lloyd, first year there, the longtime Gonzaga assistant. What do you make of this matchup?
Well, first of all, Arizona has exceeded everyone's expectations, including Tommy Lloyd. I was out at their Pac-12 Media Day, and he didn't know what he had.
Yeah.
But clearly, Sean Miller left him a lot. And they've actually got their version of Brad Davison. I think Illinois fans will see this guy, Kerr Kriisa. Excuse me, say that. He's from Finland. Kerr Kriisa. He is like the version of Brad Davison.
In what sense? What do you mean?
He's just he's got the headband. He knocks down shots. He's feisty.
Yeah.
He'll get under your skin.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's what you will see from him, and he's really good. So Arizona going into Illinois, this is their first real true road game. I mean, they did win at Oregon State, but it won't be the same. Orange Crush is going to be loud and proud. It's going to be a great atmosphere down in Champaign. And for Illinois, it's going to come down to obviously Kofi, because other teams don't have Kofi. The only team that has something like Kofi, you could argue, is Purdue, that Illinois is going to face. And so that's Arizona's weakness, and if they can exploit Kofi on a positive way, then Illinois wins. I don't know if you're going to ask me, but you are. Okay, I was going to say the team we don't discuss, but go ahead.
Who would you like to discuss? Why don't you transition yourself?
No, I thought, we never discussed Michigan State, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's talk about it.
I know.
They play tomorrow, as we said, against Penn State.
So here's the deal. It's crazy. In the 5 years I've been here, you've been here since the beginning. In basketball, we always talk about Michigan State, the standard. It just felt like this year we weren't discussing Michigan State for whatever reason. And at this point in the season, they're playing better. There is no reason to dismiss them as a team that could compete for this championship.
Okay.
Do you agree with that?
I'm not sure I think they're championship caliber, although here's what I will say. Here's what I've been really encouraged by, and I think it really manifested itself the other night against Minnesota. I don't think they have a clear-cut superstar, and I do think that distinguishes them from some of these other teams. And in some ways, that's not a great thing, because it helps to have a player, helps to have Cassius Winston, where you just say, Cassius, here's the ball, go get us a basket. But the flip side is, I think it makes them a little bit harder to defend. I just think that you can have, Gabe Brown can have an off night, or Malik Hall can have an off night. I mean, I thought Hauser coming up big the other night was really good. That he's been a huge missing link and just hasn't played, I think, in the way that we anticipated that he would. Marcus Bingham, I think, is turning into a big-time player. I love Max Christie, the freshman. I think the upside's phenomenal. So I like that aspect of this team. I guess I just wonder, kind of in crunch time in games, where do you go? And maybe the beauty of it is you can go a lot of different places.
But I do think at the end of the season, we're going to sit here and have a conversation, or maybe in any of the Big Ten tournament, that Max Christie is going to become that.
Okay.
I think he will become more of a star. We expect so much out of these freshmen to immediately develop right in front of us. But I think that he just may take time. And Tom Izzo has not historically given sort of the keys to a freshman, hey, your team and all that. Now, you got to earn it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think that this team is starting to get its own identity. The other night I thought was a great example. Minnesota made a run. Last year's Michigan State team, I think, would have been overrun. They would let teams back in. They didn't close out games as well. They basically barely got into the tournament. They were in that first four. But this year's team, I think, has a stopgap. Like, okay, we get it. You're coming at us. Let's reset and finish the job.
No doubt, there was something missing last year from this team, and this is a better team. This team is put together better, and point guard was a huge issue, and so I think Tyson Walker's play the other night was really encouraging. Penn State, real quickly, I mean, look, they're going to try to slow this game down, clearly, right? Michigan State likes to get out and run, and for Micah Shrewsbury, it's been about defending, and it's been about getting games into the half court. It feels to me like that's kind of their formula to win it. I guess I just worry about their depth. I mean, they have some really good individual players.
Yes.
The issue is, are they deep enough to compete for 40 minutes with the team?
Yeah, look, they've got legit, all Big Ten type players. I mean, there's no question that Sessoms can become that. John Hare has been an issue for teams when he plays to his potential. So, for Penn State, I think they got to kind of ugly it up. And that's what I think Micah Shrewsbury is going to try to do.
Yeah.
Make this really a rock fight in East Lansing.
You got to get back. And everyone always talks about every time I do a Michigan State game and you talk to the coach, and I heard the game the other night. I was driving back from Madison, had the audio from the game on, and they were saying, Ben Johnson said the same thing. It's after the makes, right? When you make a shot, you have to get back on defense. And so from Penn State's point of view, that's what it's going to be, because they're going to want to grind this thing out. But Michigan State does such a great job of forcing tempo. So we shall see. More from back on the Big Ten Network on Big Ten Today, a triple header Saturday on the network. Indiana trying to bounce back from its disappointment in Madison. This is actually Sunday's action. They will be hosting Merrimack. And then two great matchups in Brooklyn. We have the Boilers and NC State, Maryland and Florida. It is all Sunday, presented by Wagoneer on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. We're having a little trouble getting through to Bruce Feldman, so we bring Andy back to look ahead to Sunday. And as I said, you're going to be at those games in Brooklyn. Again, triple header on the network, and that Indiana game first. We'll see whether or not they can bounce back. But I'm interested in these games in Brooklyn. This is part of a quadruple header, right? Give me what's going on? Give me a big picture of.
Well, we've got the two middle games. You got Miami against Fordham.
Okay.
That's the morning. That's breakfast in Brooklyn.
All right.
And then we've got.
Doesn't Iona play?
Well, I was going to get there.
Okay, yeah.
Purdue, NC State.
Right.
And then you've got that's our game. And then Florida, Maryland.
Right.
And then the nightcap is Iona taking on Yale.
All right. Well, that has some interest in the tri-state area, I would say. Let's get into these games. And the Boilers and NC State is the first one involving the Big Ten. NC State, we saw, right, they beat Nebraska in quadruple overtime. This did not appear to be a great NC State team by any stretch. This probably isn't going to be their third national championship team, to say the least. That being said, a challenging game against a Power 5 team, and Purdue needs to kind of get right. They're staying in the New York metropolitan area and practicing there. What are you watching for in this game? What should Big Ten fans know about the Wolfpack and what you expect from Purdue?
Well, they're missing their best inside player, Manny Bates. He's out for the season. So if you're Purdue, exploit with the two-headed monster with Zach Edey and Travion Williams, which I'm sure Matt Painter will. But Seabron, their unbelievable score, I think he had from 39.
He was incredible against Nebraska. He was a one-man team.
Okay, so, he's obviously going to go off.
Yeah.
And, Purdue does a good job of isolating a team's best player. But I think if everything funnels inside, then Purdue should be fine in that matchup. To me, the more intriguing game is the second game, because Florida, coming off this crazy loss to Texas Southern, much better than that. For Big Ten fans, Colin Castleton has had a great career at Florida after transfer from Michigan. And so that's going to be a very interesting matchup for Kudus Wahab inside and how they handle that, because Castleton's played really well. Tyree Appleby, who hit the buzzer beater to beat Ohio State. That's going to be an issue for the perimeter for Maryland. And I'm just really going to be intrigued to see, what Maryland team we're going to see. Danny Manning now has had a little bit longer of lead time to work with this group as the main voice.
Yeah.
That Northwestern game came right off the bat last Sunday after the Mark Turgeon news. Now you've had time to deal with, I'm the interim head coach. How do we handle this? So this will be, I think, a very interesting game to see how Maryland is going forward. Can you beat a team like Florida, where you would think they'll have more fans if fans come to Brooklyn? There's certainly more alumni in the area. But we'll see. But I think I'm really interested to see what Maryland team we're going to see.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you're right. I mean, it was just a couple days between the Mark Turgeon news and that game against Northwestern. And as we talked about, Northwestern's pretty good. And so
they got Chase Odege back that game.
They did. So it's a challenging game to begin with. I mean, it's a game that Maryland may have lost no matter who their coach was. But now they have a week, as you said, and you do get a chance to figure out, who are we going to be? What might Danny Manning do differently? And again, this is a guy who has Power 5 coaching experience at Wake Forest, and of course is one of the great players in college basketball history. So that is an interesting one. I'm also intrigued by Rutgers and Seton Hall on Sunday. I mean, it's not one of our games, but I think it's on FS1. It's going to be a great game.
Unbelievable. I mean, I think it's going to be a sellout at the Rock. They had think about the great crowds they had in New Jersey last night.
Yeah.
Because they had a sellout for the Texas game at the Rock, sellout at the Rack, Jersey Mike's, for Purdue. These two fan bases don't like each other. You've got sort of the state school versus a small Catholic school. And, this game is monumental for Rutgers.
Yes.
Because if you could have a weekend where you knock off number 1 Purdue and then beat your rival, Seton Hall, which is really good right now, that's monstrous for them. For me right now, Jared Rhoden is playing like all Big East player for Seton Hall. Bryce Aiken, who had been hurt quite some time, he's their point guard, the Harvard transfer. And Alexis Yetton, another transfer from South Florida, for Cliff
Amori.
Amori. Okay, we're going to go with Amori now. Yeah. Let's assume he's healthy and okay. That's going to be a big matchup for him.
Absolutely. No, it's great. And for those who don't, you kind of alluded to it, but for those who don't know, Seton Hall beat Texas last night, right? So in case you didn't catch up on all your scores. Yeah,
lost at the buzzer to Ohio State.
Right. So they're really good too. No, that'll be a really fun game. And as you said, if Rutgers beats Purdue and follows it up by beating Seton Hall, I know they were like 200 in the net. They're a lot higher now, but all of a sudden they're back in the conversation.
Yes.
You can offset losses early in the year by showing, hey, we're good enough to beat elite teams. So that's where we are. I have college football awards season continuing. Michigan State's Kenneth Walker III wins the Doak Walker, given to the nation's top running back. And he also wins the Walter Camp, given to the nation's top player. He is the first Walter Camp winner ever not to be named a Heisman finalist. As expected, Iowa's Tyler Linderbaum wins the Remington as the nation's top center. And Michigan's Jake Moody takes the Lou Groza. He is the top kicker in the nation. Speaking of Michigan, just hot off the presses this morning, Jim Harbaugh, who did not win Big Ten Coach of the Year, named today as the AP National Coach of the Year, got 22 of the 53 first-place votes. As you can see, he finished ahead of Cincinnati's Luke Fickell, so he had 16 first-place votes. Fickell did, so 6 more for Harbaugh than for Fickell. And as promised, the much-anticipated visit from Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports. Bruce, let's start there. Jim Harbaugh, National Coach of the Year. What do you think of that decision? That the right choice?
I think it's a good choice. Look, you could have made a case for any one of the 4 guys, because after Fickell, Dave Aranda was 3rd from Baylor and Mel Tucker was 4th. Any one of those guys would be deserving. To me, where Jim Harbaugh gets A+ is he reshaped his staff. It started actually not just last year. The Josh Gaddis hire as offensive coordinator has proved to be a very shrewd move. Josh Gaddis just won the Broyles Award. Under the radar move, Sherrone Moore getting promoted to O-line. They're one of the 4 Joe Moore Award finalists. This is only a 35-year-old guy, but I think the fit with him and Gaddis in Michigan has been terrific. And then on the other side of the ball, nobody other than John Harbaugh probably knew much about Mike McDonald. Right. But if you look at where they are statistically, especially where Michigan was last year, they were like 10th or worse in the Big Ten in most defensive categories. Now they're top 3 in almost all those same categories. So that's probably the most underrated aspect of being a head coach is the staff you put together. And Jim Harbaugh deserves a lot of credit for the moves he made.
No doubt. And I've said this a lot on this show, but I think it bears repeating. Staff moves are hard because you're trying to figure out, okay, where have we been deficient? What do we need to do differently? And it's hard when you're replacing one guy, when you say, okay, who should our new coordinator be in the case of McDonald? But to replace multiple guys on your staff and to get so many of them right, essentially every one of them right, that's hard. It's like threading a needle, and Harbaugh is absolutely to be credited. And that's part of being a really good coach, Bruce, is figuring out what do we need and how do we address it.
Yeah, and the part to me that is really, really impressive is these guys weren't like proven commodities in that role. Like you or I could go try to hire Jimmy Leonard as a defensive coordinator. Right. We know he's proven at that. Josh Gaddis, he really was a first-time play caller. We know he was out of the Joe Moorhead school. Sherrone Moore, again, 35 years old to be an O-line coach in the Big Ten, to have the success he's done. And Mike McDonald, he wasn't calling defenses in the NFL for the Ravens. So to see those guys thriving as first time, it's kind of like pulling the slot machine down. You don't know that it's going to hit, all 3 of them would. And those are critical roles. We know about coordinators, but to have the O-line guy to be as good as he has proven to be, Jim Harbaugh deserves a lot of credit for that. That is not easy, as you just said.
So what about this CFP matchup here against Georgia? What stands out to you as you assess These two teams, Bulldogs were, of course, rolling all year and then just got flattened by Alabama in the SEC championship game. Michigan comes in playing its best football. What do you think of the matchup?
I love it. I think you have a team with a ton of confidence with Michigan, the way they're running the football. I think you've seen some young receivers started to emerge, and that was a question mark before. I don't know that I look at Georgia's defense or Georgia's offense necessarily and think, yeah, they should get George Pickens, who's their best playmaker on offense. He played some late in the year coming off injury. We think after a month, maybe he'll be in a lot better shape. But I don't, this isn't like they're going to face C.J. Stroud and those receivers and Travion Henderson. I mean, I think this is a really fascinating matchup between the physicality of Michigan against the physicality of that front seven at Georgia. But a little bit like the whole Mike Tyson aura. I mean, Georgia's been bloodied now. I mean, people have seen what Alabama did to them. And by the way, Alabama wasn't running the football against a lot of mediocre defenses in the SEC. So it wasn't like this was like a juggernaut Alabama team that whipped Georgia. Can't wait to see the adjustments that get made after whatever it's going to be, like 3 or 4 weeks before, from the end of the season and conference title game to when we kick off that game down in Miami.
No, I'm with you. I think there's some real self-doubt. There has to be for Georgia. And, of course, you have this quarterback situation, which now feels a little bit up in the air, given that Stetson Bennett, certainly when they were behind, did not look equipped to bring them back, and the JT Daniels discussion. And they need that time. Georgia needs that time, no doubt. I think Michigan would like to play tomorrow if they could, but Georgia absolutely needs it. What about the other game? Do you give Cincinnati much of a chance against Alabama?
I do, because I think they have a lot of elite athletes on both sides of the ball. They have a very experienced quarterback. If people are sleeping on Cincinnati as a regular group of 5 team, they need to talk to some NFL personnel people and know that they have 2 big-time corners, a couple of edge rushers, and they have a running back who actually started his career at Alabama, who is a legit NFL prospect. And they have playmakers all over the field on both sides of the ball. I don't think they're going to win, but I could see them keeping it really close. And this game, it would not shock me if Cincinnati won. Not against this Alabama team that has looked shaky at times, looked great in the conference title game. But I think what we saw last year with Georgia and Cincinnati in that Sugar Bowl where Cincinnati almost won, Cincinnati will not be intimidated by these guys at all.
Would be a remarkable story if they could pull it off. Bruce, you are a Miami grad. You grew up in that area. You know that program extremely well. You've written books about it. You are as well equipped as anyone in the country to explain the enthusiasm surrounding Mario Cristobal. Give us a sense of why Miami people are so fired up about this hire.
Start with this. He is a recruiting machine. Mario Cristobal's probably never put a golf club in his hand. Like, he is all about recruiting. That is what he was as a young assistant coach. That is what he was. He took the Nick Saban model of how they approach recruiting and moved it to the Pacific Northwest, and it worked for the Ducks. I mean, they were beating everybody for Kayvon Thibodeau and Justin Flo and a bunch of other guys that honestly, that I think he really created something, and I think he showed, hey, these are the things I know that need to happen if we're going to compete for national titles and win on the recruiting landscape. And he's going to make those same demands to Miami, and he had to get those things approved or else he wasn't going to come back. The other thing is, Nick Saban got a big pipeline about a decade ago into South Florida, and we've seen one number 1 draft pick after another at receiver come out of South Florida. Well, Mario Cristobal was really the big part of why that pipeline was developed. I think he will, I don't want to say shut off the faucet for other teams going in to get really good talent out of South Florida, but you're talking about the most fertile recruiting base in the entire country. Just look at the NFL stats on the talent that comes out of South Florida. Nobody knows that landscape better than Mario Cristobal. And the other thing I think is key here is he's part of Miami. He was there with Jimmy Johnson and Dennis Erickson and knows what it takes to be elite. It's been a long time since Miami has checked off all those boxes. Now they got a guy who knows all of that, has the know-how, has the energy to do it, but now the hard work really begins.
Timing's great, too, with Florida and Florida State kind of struggling
and
not being able to get out of their
Dave,
own way.
Like, I mean, Brent Venables out of Clemson. They're coming off a down year. Tony Elliott might leave. The AD left Clemson to go to Miami. there's a real chance to shake up the landscape in the ACC, which is already pretty shaky.
No doubt. Bruce Feldman, great stuff. Really appreciate your insights, and thanks so much for taking the time to join us.